Hi, friends.
Hey.
I'm so excited to have this conversation. I look up to so many of you in your work and one of the things that you have done all over the country, but specifically in the DMV area. As you all know, I'm Preston Mitchum. I'm an MC. And being ambassador, it's been a wonderful opportunity. And it's really amazing that we have this time and space to have this conversation today around pride. And when pride isn't prideful for all. And so today's conversation will really focus a lot on what it means to be LGBTQ and non-binary, being black and brown, the intersections of what that looks like and means for us, conversations around gender assault and sexual violence, and really conversations around Stonewall, considering that this is the 50th anniversary of the Stonewall riot or resistance. So my pronouns are he and him. And so I really, again, want you all just to be as energetic as you always are and usually are. This is going to be an informal conversation, but really a time to have a great educational opportunity and learning experience. And so I really want you all to just introduce yourselves, tell people about your name, pronouns, where you're from, the work that you do. And I would like to start with you, Alicia.
And my name is Alicia Sanchez-Gill. I'm a queer, femme, Afro-Latinx survivor of child sexual abuse. I'm also the executive director of Collective Action for Safe Spaces here in Washington, D.C.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm Dana White. My pronouns are they and them. I identify as queer and non-binary. I am of Puerto Rican descent, and I'm currently the program manager at Smile here in D.C.
Hi, my name is Samantha Master. Pronouns are Hershey, like the chocolate. PG County Idaho co-represented. Yes. And I am the co-lead of Free Black Mamas DMV and a longtime educator and organizer around queer, gender, and reproductive justice. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Right.
Well, thank you, Preston, for having me. My name is Porsha Burton, Philadelphia native. Pronouns she, her, and hers. I'm a community health worker. I love my work. It is what drives me to wake up in the morning.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I'm sitting in greatness. Let me just say that. All of you are contributing great things individually and collectively, and I think that's really how we all get free. And so I'm really excited for this conversation too, so let's just get started. Mm-hmm. So I guess the first question I'll have for you all is, in the work that we do around advocacy, grassroots organizing, sometimes grass tops organizing, and policy-related work. What is the role of activism and activists? Like, how do you see yourselves in this role, in this space as activists, and what role does activism even have in our movement?
Well, for me, being an activist is standing up for people that don't have a voice or feel like they don't have a voice, because everyone does initially have a voice. Asking the tough questions and waiting for your answer. A lot of times we ask these tough questions and we let the answer linger. I need to know the answer so I can deliver the answer to the people that need it the most. So sticking up for people, trying to open up doors, and being a nuisance, to me, is what being an activist and an advocate is.
Yeah.
I'm going to put professional nuisance on my bio.
Professional nuisance. I love that. I just want to maybe piggyback on this idea of like being a nuisance. I think so often when and some of us have worked in both like grassroots organizing and also like policy, whether that's local city policy or legislative advocacy at the federal level. And sometimes because of the way that nonprofits are set up, the kind of the way that the system works, like we can't actually advocate. Sometimes it can be really hard to advocate for like the full and broad range of needs that people have, because sometimes in nonprofits we think really immediate or maybe play it small. And I think the role of activism and of organizing is to think bigger and to be imaginative and like to vision a world that doesn't exist yet, and instead of trying to play within the current structures that already exist. And so I just like have a lot of gratitude to the folks who came before us, like to the ancestral legacy of queer and trans folks who like paved the way for my existence right now, because they like imagined a world where I could be a little bit safer, right? And we know that safety, we're not safe, right? And we know, particularly, I'm thinking about all of the trans women, 11 trans women who've been murdered just this year, who were all Black women, Black trans women. And so I think it's really important to just like say their names and like lift them into this space, because I know that our work's not done, but I think that what organizing and activism on the ground looks like is bringing everybody along and pushing policies that might otherwise not get heard because the folks on the ground know deeply what the needs are from those communities. Yeah.
I love that. I mean, I don't think I could have said it any better. But I think that the role of activism is to really reimagine what power looks like. And a power that is more just, more collective, more people-centered, and at the kind of imaginative edge of what is possible in this current world, but also what is possible in a world for our children's 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 children. And so like the role of activists is really like a role of leadership, of helping to mobilize and supporting people in really imagining innovative ways that power can be shifted towards the larger and more collective good for those at the margins, and then really being responsible for helping to push those ideas and that work forward. And there's so many different forms of activism, right? It's not just being at your legislator's office. It is the work of cultural organizers, which we have like this long, beautiful queer and trans history of. It's the work of like mobilizing of kitchen counter conversations, the kitchen table conversations. It's the work of like the building of institutions, right? Like we talk a lot about the harm Black churches have done, but one of the things that they represent is some of the longest lasting Black institutions in America. And so like all of those are different forms of activism and advocacy we can pull from our ancestral legacy.
Yeah, so like ditto what you all have said. I always like to be very clear that I don't necessarily consider myself to be an activist while I do advocacy work within the nonprofit sector. I think so much of this work relies on people knowing their lanes and sticking to that. So for me, what I'm really passionate about is like within the nonprofit sector, changing organizational cultures to better represent the people who are not at those tables and sort of like dismissed or excluded. And that's just what I've been pushing for at every organization that I've worked at. Like, who's not here? Why are they not here? And what do we need to change internally to make this more of an open space, more of a collaborative effort, and to help organizations really work hand in hand with folks who are taking the streets and are shutting things down and are demonstrating, because I know we're not always empowered to do that with a 501c3 status.
Yes,
So.
right.
That's all real, and I really particularly like the last one, like really shifting organizational culture. You know, it reminds me of when we have conversations around young people, and you know, everyone is over 40. We're having these conversations, and I'm like, I know this is a different idea of what millennial looks like, but it certainly isn't it. And so we actually have a conversation that exists with young people by young people, right? So so I really love that framing, and I really love the idea of power, right? Like really taking power and figuring out what you can actually do when you then hold the power, and particularly for the folks who experience the most marginalizations. The next thing I really want to discuss, we talked about Stonewall a bit. Very briefly, this is the 50th anniversary. Stonewall has been whitewashed, as many of us have known, you know, really taking away the work of folks like Marsha P. Johnson, Sylvia Rivera, and a few other folks, Black and Latinx, trans folks, trans women of color in particular, who really threw the first bottle against police, really to fight the resistance of violence against LGBTQ folks, but particularly against trans women. So I guess the question really is about thinking through like corporatization of pride, thinking about what pride has looked like over the past couple of years when there's been some resistance from folks like Black Lives Matter, BYP, No Justice, No Pride, among others. So the question is, what is the role of Stonewall in today's pride, and how will you reimagine what it looks like in really capturing back Stonewall's true history?
So this is like something I've been spending a lot of time recently thinking about. One of my favorite books, y'all, and don't shade me, is Stone Butch Blues by Les Greenberg. And it is like this beautiful telling, and I read it every year. And it's this beautiful telling of, it's through the lens of a white Jewish person, but about kind of butch femme culture and queer culture from like the 1950s until the 1980s. It was published in 1990. And so there's this like beautiful narrative about what it looked like to be queer in roughly in New York around the time of Stonewall that it kicks off. And I think that in honoring Stonewall, we also have to honor that like Stonewall was the pinnacle of decades of organizing.
Yes.
So it wasn't just like this moment where people got pissed off and like popped off. It was literally the work. There's a Compton cafeteria riots.
Yes.
There's the Dewey's lunch counter sit-in. Like they were in a historical moment where there was all of this like Black organizing happening. There was gender justice organizing happening, like kind of the second wave of feminism. There's a labor movement happening simultaneously, and folks are involved. Sylvia and Marsha and other folks who kick off Stonewall, who are like feeling really like I have the right to be here, are sitting in a legacy of the simultaneous movements that are happening around them, right? And so, like, one, I think we have to deconstruct that Stonewall was not an isolated incident. It sits in a legacy and it sits in a history. And also that it was really based in people's dignity, right? Like, it wasn't just that people were angry. It's that people felt this inherent sense of dignity, that they had a right to exist without police repression, without the oppression of saying you don't belong or you can't exist or you have no right to be here. And so what does it mean in this moment for us to reclaim the inherent dignity of what it means to be Black and brown and queer and trans? And I think that there's something about it also being married to what we don't talk about often is the reproductive justice before that language existed of the moment of Stonewall. So people with organizing and feeling inherent dignity around their right to love and their right to have the type of sex that they wanted, their right to bodily autonomy and choices about their bodies, their right to not be killed by Johns and to do sex work to support themselves. Like all of that shit was happening at the same time. And so I don't think pride is something that can be corporatized. I don't think it's something that should be corporatized, and I think white gays have sold us down the river. And so right now I'm curious about what could it mean to reclaim the legacy of both our dignity to exist in the world, who is not at the table, who are we not thinking about? Are we thinking about disabled people during our pride marches? Are we thinking about undocumented people? Are we thinking about people who don't speak English as the first language? Where is the inherent dignity for the vast breadth and depth of queer bodies and trans bodies that are part of our community?
I think what we've observed over the past few years, and this year in particular, is like a clear division between those folks who recognize pride as something much larger than this sort of corporate sponsored party and celebration. While I do value celebration as queer and trans folks, I think that we deserve that in our lives. And I think that always has to be a part of our movement towards equality and liberation. There is this clear division between those of us who want to take back the true spirit and meaning of what pride has always meant, and those who just want to party. And I think that the division really is based on privilege and access. I don't really feel like celebrating if I'm underpaid and devalued and criminalized and unsafe. And that is not the case for a lot of our white, queer, and trans peers.
Absolutely. And I even see that show up at Pride. So I was at the Pride March just a week ago, and had numerous instances of like white folks touching me without consent, or wanting to touch my body or wanting to touch my hair. And there's this way in which like folks feel like they have access to Black and brown, queer, and trans bodies that like lives in a long legacy and context of like white supremacy and white violence and sexual violence against Black and brown, queer, and trans bodies. And so even in our pride spaces, like there is privilege and power and whiteness just like showing up all the time. And Samantha, I just want to go back to something you said. I'm so grateful for your like framing and context of Stonewall in the context of all of these other movements that were happening at the same time. And I'm really glad that you brought up like bodily autonomy, because I feel like that is the place where the intersections of like gender justice and reproductive justice and like anti-violence movements and Stonewall, like they live together, and they live on our bodies, right? They live in our own experiences. Like as a survivor myself, I'm hyper aware of not only the ways that gendered violence, both at the interpersonal level and at the state, show up, but also in the ways that like we don't actually still have access to getting the support and the services that we need when we actually go seek help, whether we're engaged in sex work and go to the police for help, or we are trying to just access mainstream services like that. There's a lot of places where we are still left out of conversations. Queer and trans folks are left out of narratives about abortion bans. There are like all of these ways in which queer femmes are often left out of conversations about HIV and AIDS prevention. Like there are all these places where we can't be our most authentic selves. It's not like welcome. So just like grateful to you for lifting that out. Yeah.
I think this is the theme that I've definitely heard has been around like bodily autonomy and literally what it means to have access and ownership of your own body. The one thing that we do always share is, it's not that we don't have monolithic experiences, but the one thing I always say is Black folks at least share many common experiences. Even if they don't exist in a monolith. Because even at Pride, my family was visiting here, and this white queer man came up to me and literally just almost attacked me. I'm sure he didn't consider it an attack. And my mom is a lot more peaceful than I am, but
peace in her spirit.
But so her energy came over me a little bit when it otherwise would not have. Also because that's still my mama, so I can only do so many things around her. But but it reminded me of like this idea that like even in a space that is meant for celebration, allegedly, there's still this idea that like I'm having restrictions on my own body and that you think you have autonomy over my own body. And again, becoming that theme around reproductive justice, especially, I finally met a couple of reproductive justice mothers a couple of weeks ago, and it was an honor.
The OGs.
Oh, the OGs of the movement, yes. But working in reproductive health and rights myself, and particularly with the lens of justice framing, something I just always think about is really this narrative around queer and trans people not invited into the conversation around abortion access, and not included in the narrative and the idea that it's a cis-het women's issue, right, and not a gestational or reproductive capacity issue. So anyone can definitely comment on this, but Samantha, I was really thinking about this around the abortion restrictions coming through Georgia, Alabama, Louisiana, Ohio, among others. But around no conversations really for queer and trans folks, both in policy reforms, the narrative. Activists have definitely done, I think, a much better job about it, but at the legislative level, certainly not. Could you really give us a framing around what reproductive justice is and what it means, and really how queer and trans folks are included in that particular movement?
Yeah, so this I can, and I want to say that, I am a student of reproductive justice. I sit at the feet of many brilliant queer Black women who are literally leading this work, folks like Latasha Mays, like Monica Simpson, like Dion Haywood, Nia Martin Robinson, and I mean just the vast numbers of queer Black women. Yes. I know I forgot some names, so don't fight me.
I have a couple in my head.
Thank you. My understanding of reproductive justice is a framework created by Black women to really deconstruct, to really blow up this idea of choice, right? What does it mean to have choice in a world where our bodies are harassed and killed by the state, by intimate partners, where we are forcibly deprived of the right to live with dignity through programs like, supplemental access to nutrition assistance or welfare, as it's commonly called. What does it mean to have choice in a world where we are sexually abused, where we are physically abused, and where we do not have full autonomy over our bodies because the state is consistently denying our humanity. And so not just the right to have a child, the right to parent the child or children you have, or to care for yourself and your family, but also the right to live with, to make choices over your body, right? To have bodily autonomy, to have a dignified existence based in what you want to happen to your body, and not based on what society tells you is possible or is available through legislative process. And so this is where I get to shout out the really dope work of folks like Renee Bracy Sherman at We Testify, who's been doing a lot of beautiful, brilliant narrative intervention with abortion storytelling with queer and trans people. Shout out to the homie Kazembe, who's like telling his story about seeking abortion access. And there are too few Renees in the world, and too many large white reproductive health and rights organizations really attempting to gain legislative favor by providing the most palatable narrative of abortion access possible, and not the complicated histories of all of the reasons people need complete autonomy over their reproductive and gestational decision making. And so I am holding in this moment, one is that so many of the mamas out of the mamas we bailed out this year, we bailed out 15 mamas, the most we bailed out in the history of Free Black Mamas DMV. Almost all of them are survivors of sexual violence. About 10 of them are biological mothers. Almost all of them have chosen abortion at some point in their lives. 4 of them are queer. And so there has been this, like, I don't see them reflected. I don't see these like brilliant, beautiful women that I know, that I am like in community with, when I hear stories about what these abortion bans mean. And I think that is an intentional decision. And so I think that we need more queer and trans people to tell their stories, but we also need more spaces for our stories to be heard, uplifted, honored, and to really create this intervention around the ways that abortion is currently being talked about.
I love all of that. And I really, must also uplift folks like organizations like Advocates for Youth, which is really providing that space for young queer and trans folks of color to share their own stories around abortion access and by and large restrictions, depending on where they live too. And speaking of the narrative of restrictions too, Porsha, I would really like to you to share you're a PrEP model, and so it's amazing. I know you talk about the work of PrEP and really what it means to you, and really about services. And PrEP really is a strong intervention that's really been in the media about a couple of years, but wasn't just discovered a couple of years ago. And so, for you, what does PrEP mean to you in the work, and what does it mean for sexual health?
PrEP gives me an extra reassurance of what people would deem to be safe. You know what I'm saying? Condomless sex is not a bad thing. That's how I got here. And I'm happy to be here.
Shout out.
So it's not a bad thing, but sex is something that people are going to have. So me having access to the PrEP pill, being a trans woman, being a retired commercial sex worker, it's an awesome thing. You do not know a person's background, where they're coming from, their trials, their tribulations, and helping them just this one way can broaden so many other opportunities for themselves. So me offering, my voice or my look or anything towards it, I'm with it, especially when it's for my community. And there was one more thing that you said. Like,
really, what is your experiences around like services, and who's often left out of the conversation of PrEP services? How are you seeing that narrative play out for you and your work?
I see cisgender Black men left out of the conversation all the time. I feel like we need to include them in every conversation regarding sexual health, because if we're not including them, then what are we doing? African American women right now are some of the highest carriers, and they're not giving it to each other. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, we need to pull everyone in on the conversation, pull everyone a seat up to the table in order to get a hold on things. And the barrier is we don't have enough information about it. It's not like how you can go into the corner store and buy a condom, but you can't go into the corner store and just learn about stuff that you should just learn about. A lot of the times, warning labels, and a lot of the times, information is so small, it's often missed. So it'll be great to kind of to find more things that are visible, and you have to service the community the way the community sees it to be served. I can't tell, someone whose lifestyle I don't live, how they should be living it, the things that they need. So that plays a big part.
Yeah, and I hear a couple of things there too, right? Around engaging men and boys in ways that they can actually show up for folks who are more marginalized around them, around even ownership and autonomy over their own bodies without allowing that privilege to play out in those spaces as well. And I think it's been difficult, but there are some Men Engage Global Alliance is one that really engages men and boys for gender justice issues worldwide. And so I do think we need to have some of those conversations without, you know, as a cis man myself, without allowing my own privilege to play out in those spaces, because I do come into this space with a lot more access than trans women, for example, than even Black cis women, queer women. And I think we see those narratives play out in different ways. So I appreciate that conversation and really bringing that to light. Alicia, I would like to talk to you a little bit about, you know, we're fighting a lot of efforts in DC specifically around sex work decriminalization. And so obviously we can talk all day about what sex work decrim means and the public health benefits behind decriminalization. Yes, that's the energy I always need. So what does sex work decrim mean to you? What are some of the work that we're doing in CAS and the Sex Workers Advocates Coalition? And really, what is it that we can do to make sure sex workers are free?
Yeah. So let me give some grounding. So the Sex Worker Advocates Coalition is a coalition of activists, sex workers, current and former sex workers, and allies who are working to make sure that sex workers have access, autonomy, choice, and a range of the services and supports that they need, both to do their work, but also to just live safely in DC, which is really hard, just in general for queer and trans Black folks. And so that's who is behind the scenes. It's made up of individuals, organizations, folks from private and public sector, activists, all of these different folks who've come together over this to work on this legislation, which is to decriminalize adult consensual sex work in Washington, D.C. And we really see that, again, for CAS, and I think for many of our partners like BYP 100, No Justice, No Pride, KIPS. So shout out to all of the folks who are kind of at the table and leading this work. And are in this work that is driven by current and former sex workers of color and our allies. So we came together because we know a couple of things. One is that according to a study by the Office on Human Rights in Washington, D.C., so D.C.'s Office of Human Rights, employers would rather hire, 49% of employers would rather hire a less qualified cisgender applicant than a more qualified trans person. So even in DC, a place with some of the most kind of liberal laws and the most protections for queer and trans people, we still see that there's a disparity in hiring for trans folks of color in particular. Almost 50% of trans folks of color are unemployed. So that's some background, right? What we also know in DC and in many other jurisdictions is that trans folks will be stopped by the police just for being trans, right? So they are both racially and gender profiled just for existing in their bodies and having the audacity to be authentic and having the audacity to walk down the street. So often it's considered the intention to solicit for prostitution, right? So folks can be pulled over or stop and frisked, right? When we talk about stop and frisk, that's not the image that we see, but we know that sex work is a site where police harassment and police violence occurs, and the people that bear the burden of that are trans, Black and brown folks, and queer and non-binary Black and brown folks. And then the other thing that I'll say about that is we see sex work as an extension of all of the other forms of gender justice, right? So folks have choice, folks have autonomy, and sometimes, we're making choices out of not great choices, but it's a choice nonetheless. And so with all of that information and that lens, we come to attempting in Washington, D.C. to decriminalize adult consensual sex work. And to invest, instead of investing in policing sex workers, really invest in the things that sex workers say that they need, right? So housing, right? Access to health services. If I am engaged in street-based sex work and cops can pull me over, open my purse, and see condoms and use that as evidence of my intention to sell sex, that is not, that's dangerous, right? It's not good public health. It's inhumane, right? It's also police profiling. But in addition to that, like, we have to remove all of the barriers that make people's work unsafe, just like any other labor that people do. And so with that, we are investing in resources, in community-based services and mental health services and the things that sex workers need, which is not more criminalization. What we also know about criminalization is that it makes it harder for folks if people want to leave, which is not everyone's story or narrative, right? But if people want to leave the sex trade, having a criminal record, having multiple arrests on your record is actually not a helpful way. And even in a city like DC that has banned the box, right? We know that those, it's hard to operationalize those kinds of policies, right? And we can't ensure that there's consistency in every organization or job for those things. And so we really see arrest and criminalization is actually making it harder for people to stay safe, right? We know that the police don't keep us safe. We know that sex workers can be harmed, entrapped by police, sexually assaulted by the police, right? And so we want to reduce the amount of violence that sex workers experience at the hands of the state by decriminalizing their work.
Absolutely.
So I just want to jump in on this because I am always so disgusted by how few LGBT organizations have taken up the call to decriminalize sex work, especially as we enter this this 50th anniversary of Stonewall, where like when we talk about the histories of Marsha and of Sylvia and of the Dykes and of the trans women and of the gay men who were a part of that revolutionary riot, they were often sex workers. What are we doing? What is
there's just no conversation about bodily autonomy, consent, sexual pleasure, power. There's no way to have those conversations without including sex work. There's no way to talk about gender justice without talking about sex work.
But the threads of all that we know with bodily autonomy is repro, is queer, is sex work driven, right? Like all of those themes are around bodily autonomy.
Absolutely.
So if we're not having those conversations with the folks who are at the margins, then we're missing a huge opportunity. Even with, Samantha, to your point, even with the organizations, in my experience, that have finally decided to say something, it's only because places like DC, New York, and other places are now starting to really push through decriminalization bills. So it's more opportunistic than it is actually wanting to center the voices of the most marginalized.
Absolutely. And we know that the folks on the inside of those organizations have had to push really hard to get those organizations to like take a public stance, to be in support of sex workers and their allies who've been doing this work on the ground for years, decades, literally in Washington, D.C. So I think that it's really important to like lift up all of the grassroots organizing that happens. It's actually mostly volunteer. That's like sex worker led, and like also acknowledge that these big LGBT organizations need to be paying trans and queer folks for our labor, right? They need to be paying us for our labor and our storytelling and our like experience in the work. As we go forward.
No, that's real. And Dana, it's something you spoke to earlier was really this idea of like what it looks like when you're underpaid or when labor isn't valued or experienced. And so the one thing that we probably should talk about a bit more is always around centering young people. So for you, what does it look like to center young people, and particularly young people at the margins?
Okay. I think it starts with understanding and accepting that young people, particularly LGBTQ young folks, under 25 and under 21 and under 18 are having sex. They're having sex, they're enjoying it, they're having a lot of it, and they should have the autonomy to do that. It's about providing them with safe or brave spaces to talk about those experiences, to access resources, and to like get more information about how to do that in the most healthy way possible for them. The truth of the matter is that when we're talking about decriminalizing sex work or just sex workers in general, plenty of the young people that I've worked with, not just in DC, but in Charlotte and Boston, have been sex workers. It's because they are often forced into circumstances that they shouldn't be in. We know the rate of LGBTQ youth homelessness is super high nationwide, but particularly in these major cities. So we are not adequately addressing that issue, but then criminalizing young people for being resilient and resourceful and doing what they need to do to survive. So just like accepting those realities about young people's lives, but also giving them the access and power to advocate for themselves and to make decisions about how they want services delivered to them. At Smile, what I've been pushing for is a youth advisory committee, and making sure that that youth advisory committee is paid, because that's labor. And we often want young people to share their narratives and do labor for free or for exposure or experience, and that's just really nonprofit exploitation. So accepting realities of their lived experiences, but also giving them access and power.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Exploitation is definitely real, even when it comes to the nonprofit industrial complex, and so I think that's something that should be raised, and we should pay folks for their labor always, so thank you for that. Alicia.
I just wanted to jump in and just piggyback on something that, Dana, that you brought up, which is this idea that, like, sex work criminalization is just harming people for the things that they do to survive. Like, when we look at disparities in housing and homelessness, and we look at disparities around employment, when we look at things like even things that we don't think are related, like school push out for kids of color, right? Those things impact queer and trans kids of color too, right? And so all of those things create the scaffolding for people's choices, right? And so I think that's really important to name. And also, even if we removed all of the structural barriers for why people choose sex work, right? If everyone had access to housing, some people would still do sex work because it's convenient, because you are your own boss, because you like sex, right? And sex is enjoyable and pleasurable, because you're good at it, right? And that is an okay choice too. We have to like destigmatize this idea that sex work and sex is inherently bad, and like connected in some way to like morality, both for adults and especially for young folks.
And this is where I think the question you asked Preston about kind of the role of activism really makes me feel like it's an exciting question, because I believe that all decisions are political, and like we don't exist in an apolitical world. Absolutely. And so young people being shamed and stigmatized and ignored for the sex that they're having, or not being properly educated about safer sex practices, is a direct result of educational policy that disallows for consent-based medically accurate sex education that is representative of the whole of human experience. And that is deeply connected to the shame and stigma built often by religious institutions and white supremacist puritanical values, which is connected deeply to the ways that like people show up in the world, right? And the shame and guilt and stigma that they have, and which is connected to like criminalization and carceral policy. So it's not just like destigmatizing sex work. It's that like literally these are inherently political conversations, and we actually do have an opportunity to create more freedom for people, which is in the spirit of Stonewall.
Yes. You know, and that will lead to one of the final questions then, because it really, when we look at nationwide these restrictions on abortions, the criminalization of bodies through sex work, all of this really is connected to people's fear of young people having sex, of people having sex, of queer and trans folks having sex. You know, it's also the very reason why many places do not allow for comprehensive sexuality education, particularly sex education that is rooted in the experiences of queer and trans folks as well. So I guess one of the final questions will be around sex positivity and destigmatizing sex. You know, one of the reasons why I ultimately decided to be a DC Beans ambassador is because a lot of it is rooted in sex positivity. And in sex positivity, it's more than just this vernacular or expression, right? It's like actually, how do you live out your experiences every day? How do you actually frame questions? How do you actually have a conversation with people that's connected to their experiences around being sex positive? So one of the final questions, again, is around what does it mean to be sex positive for all of you? And then how do you destigmatize sex, and what's the importance of destigmatizing sex?
I'm going to jump in. For me, sex positivity is having good sex, having consensual sex, and not being apologetic about the sex that I'm doing on my time. You know, I'm not going to be apologetic about that. And I think that everyone should even though everyone doesn't, but everyone should have that mind frame. It's short sex. You cannot let other people police your bedroom. It's if you do, you will not be having good sex.
Or your kitchen, or your living room.
Or public spaces. I have a motto: as long as it's consensual, and it's safe, and you are coherent, have fun.
Yes, right.
And of age, but have fun. You know what I'm saying? But just dating back to what Dana said, young people are having sex. I was 15, I had sex. I transitioned at 15 in high school. Yes, we were having sex. The only thing that the gift that I would like to say that I got was that I was in a pregnancy prevention program at eighth grade. So I got a lot of sex knowledge. So going into it, I didn't feel uneducated about it. Yeah. But if you was to ask like a 21-year-old or like a 60-year-old person, you don't know what sex is. But I've been learning about sex since 8th grade. Yeah. So I think that we have to put a little bit more trust into the youth and listen to them because they know what they want. Yeah.
I think also as we push for like comprehensive queer and trans inclusive sex ed nationwide, through public schools, but also with the help of nonprofit organizations sort of leading that work. Or like having those offerings in community, I think that we have a responsibility as queer and trans adults to show up unapologetically as sexual beings. In an appropriate manner, of course. I don't tell all my business to my youth, but I'm very candid that I've lived a rich sexual life. Like, I have gotten my life. I'm a former stripper, I'm a former go-go dancer. I'm very candid about those experiences so that they can see me as a healthy, vibrant, autonomous sexual being, because I think that they need to see those examples.
And just the piggyback is that it doesn't stop there. Like I was a sex worker, but I worked for the government. I'm a model. It doesn't stop there, and I think it's important that we share these stories because for some people they think this is where it stops. This is what I'm good at. This is all I can do, and for some people that's just the starter. You have to get on your own. You have to live. You have to get money, all that stuff. But that's not the end.
We do not live single issue lives. So
absolutely.
Yes.
I think sex positivity, if I could sum it up in kind of 5-ish words, it would be consensual, communicative, equitable, enthusiastic, and pleasure-based.
Yes.
Those are my new 5 favorites.
They are.
For most things.
For most things in life.
Everything, right? Those are my 5 favorite words now.
I need that put together.
We need an infographic or something for that. Yeah. Do you want to say more? Sorry, I got excited about those 5 words.
We're just going to put this in a graphic and disperse it to the group.
Especially around pleasure, because I know many people who have bad sex.
Yeah.
And they do it because they feel they need to do it.
Yeah.
Sure.
And so, what does this idea of pleasure mean? Within those 5 amazing 5 words, what does the idea of pleasure-based sex mean to you?
So it is, I think, when you get those other 4, right, you get to a form of pleasure. When your sex is, equitable and whatever that means to you. When it's communicative, it's consensual, it's enthusiastic, right? Those are the pillars of pleasure. Shout out to Adrienne Marie Brown and pleasure activism.
Yes.
And what does it mean to live a pleasure-filled life, not just in the bedroom but beyond? And so I think of those as kind of the pillars of pleasure, my own personal pillars of pleasure, if you will. And I think that not only as queer, I think that we often talk about as queer and trans people sex through a very narrow view, and I'm really interested in how do we talk about the changing sexual landscapes of our lives. Desire and pleasure are landscapes. They're not one solid location. And talking with each other about how those landscapes shift and change in ways that we can be in better relationship, more integrated with our bodies and our own desires. And then what that does for the rest of our life, how freeing it is.
Yeah, something that I'm thinking a lot about is just this idea. We talked a little bit about policing our sexuality. I'm thinking about the legacy of policing at Stonewall, the legacy of policing our sexuality, and the ways that continues to show up in harmful policies. And so what I constantly come back to in terms of sex positivity for myself, in addition to consensual and safety, whatever that looks like kind of defined between the 2 or 3 or 4, however many people are involved at that point. It's like this idea that it is so radical, right, to choose ourselves and our bodies and our pleasure solely for our pleasure, right? It is so radical, or getting our needs met, whatever that means, right? It is so radical, and Black folks and Black queer and trans folks in particular have been so, they have tried to take that away from us, right? They have tried to take joy and pleasure and sensuality away from us, and like to reclaim that for ourselves. It's just, it feels so powerful to be able to hold space for that. The other thing that I think a lot about is like the way that we police like non-monogamous relationships and like kink and BDSM, and like I want to make space for all of the ways, and even asexuality, right? All of the ways that sex shows up in our lives just feels really present for me right now, and as a person who strongly identifies as poly and like, you know, and queer, like I think that sometimes queer folks in general have like spent a lot of time trying to prove that we're normal, or like just like the straights. And I'm like, no, but it's okay, we're not. Like, it's a life. Yeah, I'm like, no, that's fine. It's a lifestyle. This thing is it's a lifestyle. Okay, like, in the sense that like queer politic, right? Queer and trans and deep dyke politic is that it's a resistance, right? It's intentionally not the same, right? That is the politic of it, is that it's not the same, and so I just want to like honor that. And the other thing that I'll say too is like we also have to talk about trauma. I think and I don't want to come from a place of trauma like specifically, but I just want to name that like in our conversations about sex positivity, like we should be making space for survivors in those conversations, and the maybe kind of unique and specific things that survivors need in conversations and in practicing sex safely, whatever that looks like to us. Sometimes that may be code words. Sometimes when we say that, we mean condoms or other forms of protection. But you know, safety looks different for all of us, and so just making sure to be communicative about those things feels really important. Yeah.
Well, this has been such a rich conversation. We've, I think, talked about everything. We ain't solved all the world problems yet, but
we're getting there.
Yeah, but it is an honor to sit in a space and really have conversations around pleasure, bodily autonomy, criminalization, policing, queer and trans folks of color, and what that all means, so we can all be free. And so we will wrap up the conversation, but before we do that, I would like for you all to take maybe 30 seconds and really think about the state and reflect on the state of LGBTQ people of color and non-binary people of color. For you, what is the state of our community, and how can we do better in making sure that we're all free?
I definitely feel like we are at a state of emergency. You know, trans women are being killed rapidly. No one's talking about it. No one's doing anything about it, or not doing enough. Homeless youth are popping up rapidly. It's a lot that we are not doing within our own community, and it's a lot of organizations that are not doing what they're supposed to be doing. They are getting these big bucks, this money. They are buying T-shirts. They are not doing the work, you know, and it looks good on them, but it's definitely showing up in the community. As you see, we have more homeless youth. We have more women being killed. So with all these organizations that are popping up, exactly what are you doing? And I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I mean it in I just ask the question that no one's asking.
This is not theoretical for us. This is like deeply a lived experience, and so I'm grateful for you asking the questions and naming it out loud. There is not enough happening, and I think one of the other challenges that continues to happen is like the mainstream LGBTQ organizations were like, okay, we got marriage, we're out of here, see ya, good luck to the rest of you, right? And we're saying we still need housing. We're saying we still need access to health care. We're saying we still need to be ensured that we won't be discriminated against in our job searches and or fired for our identities. We're saying that we need so much more because, you know, in the words of Audre Lorde, we don't need single issue lives. Maybe you also said that already. But just
shout out to my Audre though.
Yeah, shout out to Audre Lorde. Just bring it back. That like we have to do our work considering the folks at the margins of the margins, because we know that when we support those folks, that like all of us actually win. And so that's the way to get free, is by centering the folks who are most often left out of these conversations. Yeah. And I just want to also name that I'm thinking deeply about like Pulse, the Pulse nightclub shooting, you know, just like a few days ago, right? I'm thinking about Lillian Polanco, who was killed at Rikers jail, and just thinking about the way that the state continues to harm queer and trans people of color, particularly Black and Latinx people. Thinking deeply about Pulse as also as an Afro-Puerto Rican person, where 50% of the people killed at Pulse were Puerto Rican, of Puerto Rican descent, right? And so our work has to be broad. Our work has to rely on each other for safety instead of relying on the state. And I think that community-based interventions and like interventions led by the people most impacted is the only way forward. It's what we've already been doing, but it's the only way forward. Yeah.
I would say, in addition to centering the folks who are marginalized, even within the margins, so that would include youth, women, Black women specifically, and it should go without saying, Black trans women. Philanthropic sort of models need to shift, because what's happened in the nonprofit sector is that organizations are accountable to funders, but they're no longer accountable to community. So what does it look like? What do we need to explore so that money is being put to its best use?
And we need to hold the organizations accountable.
Yes.
And hire the community that you want to serve.
Absolutely.
Because far too often I see men hosting women's groups when it would be so much more comfortable for a woman to host a women's group. No one knows more about women than women. Just like no one knows more about trans people than trans people. No one knows more about gay men than gay men. So I feel like that we should all like allow people to show up as their authentic selves, so we can learn from them and better serve them.
I want to just bring in the names of some ancestors that are on my spirit right now.
Absolutely.
Edmonia Lewis, Pat Parker, we've named Audrey Lorde, June Jordan, some of our living legends like Tracy Africa and Miss Major, who is still here, Miss Jonetta at TJIJP. Like some of the radical dykes doing the work, like Charlene Carruthers and Mary Hooks and Serena Sebring, and some folks who are coming to mind on my spirit, Janae Taylor. So that we are in this critical moment where we are both in crisis and at the edge of enormous possibility and enormous imagination. And so like while we are surviving and have survived like seemingly insurmountable, like unfathomable forms of violence, I think that the beauty of who we are is our commitment to living and loving in the face of unimaginable repression. And that is our legacy, and that is the legacy that I think we get to get grounded in order to create the world that we want to see with each other and for our children's children. And so I am grateful for you, Preston, for holding the space, for the brilliance of the panel, and I hope that we can continue to be on the cutting edge of innovating a freer life that Sylvia and Marcia and those that threw the first bottle couldn't have even imagined.
Yes. This conversation has been, I feel like there should be a collection plate somewhere that I'm missing.
There'll be a link at the bottom of it.
Right, exactly. Because at least our money will go to the community. So,
for sure.
Yes. So, Porsha, Samantha, Dana, and Alicia, thank you so much for sharing this space with me. I must always share about being a proud being and with being DC being an ambassador. And really the work that we have to do. This conversation has been great, and I really do just want to honor you for taking the time and using your energy and your space for this very thing that we're discussing. So thank you all so much, and let's get free.
Let's get free.
All right, y'all.